Good morning, students. Let me take this opportunity first to congratulate you all for successful PUC first year results. I think all of you could see the result, PUC first year result, with whatever link and password we had sent. In case if anybody is not able to see the result, wait till today up to 12 noon, and if same continues, you can call on the helpline number which is given to you. Now, after the first year result, some of you might have got the expected marks. Some of you might have not got the marks of your caliber. Generally, what happens is that most of the children in the first year will have a behavior like chalta hai. Still, I am in first year. Let me see in the second year, and that will result into their low performance. And generally, what happens? Children soon after getting SLC performance in 90s, 90% I mean, they fly in the air. I have got 90%, but remember, children's SLC percentage or SLC syllabus, SLC mode of exam is quite different what we have got in the PUC pattern of exam. So here you will have to strike very hard. Your focus is not only the theory examination, you will have to appear competitive exams also. And in any competitive examinations, particularly most of you going with NEET and JEE, every subject thorough understanding is must, conceptual understanding is must. So that method what you use in SLC or even in your all the previous year, like by hearting the answer and just mugging up into the examination, that's not going to work out here. You can manage up to certain extent in the theory, but you cannot do well, you cannot excel in the competitive exam. Each and every concept which is taught to you, you will have to understand thoroughly. And it's not the everything there itself. After understanding, consolidation, practice, lot of hard work is must. So nowadays, everybody thinks of shortcut. Like without doing anything, we expect everything. See, I am a very strong believer of law of conservation of energy. Being a physics student, I am a strong believer of that. And it is in the other way, it is a law of nature, I would say. Nature never gives you anything, any output without the inputs that you have. You cannot expect good thing without doing good. You cannot expect anything extra without putting extra effort. So at least for the PUC second year, right from the initial days now, you can say this is the beginning of your PUC second year. You plan your schedule properly. You chalk out your schedule properly. With the help of your, either it could be your parents or any elder brother, sister. If not, we teacher are available to you to help you. So you can just ring on to the teacher with whom you are comfortable, and you can take a guidance, you can take a help to chalk out your schedule. But most of the time, most of the children do that. They'll prepare everything. Schedule they'll prepare, study room they'll clean, table they'll clean, everything they'll arrange. And by the time when it comes to start the study, they'll say, I'll do it from tomorrow. I got too much tired by all this work, I'll start it from tomorrow. Children, remember, tomorrow never come. Tomorrow is tomorrow. What you have got in your hand is today, present. Encash it in proper way. Each of you have got tremendous potential. Because nature never does any injustice with every individual. A lot of potential we all are been given. It's not like today yesterday PUC results have been declared. The one who has got 95, 96 and the one who has got just passing mark, I don't think their capacity of brain is anything different. And the one who has got 95% has got 1 kg brain, and the one who has got passing marks has got only 250 gram of brain. No. Capacity, as such capacity is concerned, it is one and same. But what makes the difference is our attitude. Attitude and readiness to work hard. If you manage with these two, I guarantee you that each of you will have very good results. So the only thing, proper planning and sticking on to the plan is important. Everybody does the plan. But sticking to the plan, carrying out that plan throughout the academic year is what is needed or very much essential. And I hope, at least for the second year, because those who have not worked in the first year, they'll have to put the double efforts. They'll have to work double than what whoever has done sincerely in the first year. Because in competitive exam, you not only have the second year syllabus, but from the first year also. So then naturally, along with this, if you want to cover the first year, naturally the double efforts will have put, double time you will have to spend. And I'm hopeful you will do that. And always remember, whatever the good things are there, we don't get that very easily. Good habits, we don't get very easily. They need to be cultivated deliberately. ಹೌದಲ್ಲ, ಈಗ ಯಾರಿಗೆ ಬಯೋದು ಗೇದು ಯಾರು ನೀವು ಫಾರ್ಮಲಿ ಕೋಚಿಂಗ್ ತಗೊಳ್ಳೋದು ಬೇಕಾಗಲ್ಲ. ಹೌ ಡು ಯು ಕ್ಯಾಚ್? ಬಟ್ ದ ಗುಡ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ಸ್, ಗುಡ್ ಹ್ಯಾಬಿಟ್ಸ್, you don't catch very easily. It takes time. You have to put the efforts, you have to do that deliberately. Then only you are going to cultivate the good habits. And generally what I am observing in the recent days, you children are not taking any advice by your mother, by your father, by your teacher, by your elder positively. Generally parents what they do, ನೋಡು ಮಗ ಇವೆಲ್ಲ ನಿಂಗೆ ಅವೈಲೇಬಲ್ ಆದ, ನಮ್ಮ ಟೈಮಿಗೆ ಏನೂ ಇದ್ದಿಲ್ಲ, ಚಲೋ ವರ್ಕ್ ಮಾಡು, ನಿಂಗೆ ಇರಲಿಕ್ಕಿಲ್ಲ, ನಮಗಾದ ನಂಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತದ ಹೆಂಗೆ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ನಾವು SLC ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ, ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ 10 ದಿವಸದಾಗ ನಾ ಮಾಡಿ 80% ತಂದು ತೋರಿಸಿಲ್ಲ ನಿಂಗೆ. These are the answers which are given. Mind, my dear children, SLC is different, I have mentioned already, and PUC is different. That's not like a 2020 game. In PUC, you will have to work like a test match. Continuous, steadily, without deviation, without losing the concentration. You will have to work hard. And if you do that, then is going to be success on your way. Nobody will stop you from achieving your goal. So it is you. If you mind, you can do the miracles. We all are like a complementary to you. Be it your mother, be it your father, be it your teacher. All are just like we play a supporting role, but you are the main actor. And unless and until as a main actor you perform well, nothing can be done. Unless and until you mind, unless and until you struggle, nothing can be achieved. Even if Lord Brahma comes and try to teach you, if you don't mind, you cannot learn the things. So your involvement is also equally important. See, the process of learning, three elements have to be equally active. First, of course, your teacher. Second, you as a student. And third one, even parents also. Even parents keeps on giving the answer, sir, no, bhal busy iddevu, munjal hodak cycle barತೀವಿ. Of course, you do that. It is your duty. But even we as a parent, including me, even I have got my own children. I cannot keep on answering that much in the morning to evening. I am in the college. I am not able to see my child, my children's performance. I have to do that. You will have to do that. Whatever the busy schedule you have, you will have to find out the time. You will have to see what your child has done. You have to see how your child is doing. Just by throwing everything on the college, you cannot expect good thing. Your role, my sincere request to all the parents, your role is also vital. So kindly be active to improve the performance of your ward. Daily at least 10 to 15 minutes. You find with whatever busy schedule you have, talk with them, sit with them. See what the difficulties they are facing, and those difficulties, if you pass on to us, even we are ready to help you in all aspects. Okay. Anyhow, once again let me congratulate and straight away move to the wherever we left in the yesterday's period. Yesterday, I was talking about continuous charge. The charge which is not point, we referred it as a continuous charge. And while discussing about continuous charge, if you remember, I had mentioned about three different ways in which we can have continuous charge. One, if you remember, linearly distributed continuous charge. Second one, we spoke about surface distribution of the charge. And third one, volume distribution. And with every individual distribution, we got introduced with the term called charge density. While dealing with linear distribution, linear charge density. While dealing with surface distribution, surface charge density. And while dealing with volume distribution, volume charge density. And even we have understood what do they actually represent and what are their units. Now with this background, I had mentioned, if you remember, Coulomb's law is applicable only for the point charges. And I had a question there, what should I do if the charge is not point? Let's see then, let's go ahead to understand at least certain basics. Once we go to the higher level of problem, even all in depth, we can go with what the further steps are to be followed. So I am going to teach you certain basic things in regard with how to tackle if the charge is not a point charge. Say for example, I have a situation like this. This is one long wire I have got. To this long wire, I have given positive charge. Wire is positively charged. Now you are very easily in the position to understand the charge is not point. Distributed charge, I can say linearly distributed charge. And here I have one point P, which is at a distance r from this wire, and that r is very small compared to whatever the length of wire. Under that case, I can call charge as a distributed charge, not a point charge. And at this point P, I have got one point charge placed. I have got one point charge placed there. Say this point charge is Q, and the charge which I have given to the wire is capital Q. The charge which I have given to the wire is capital Q. And my expectation is now, my need is now to work out force between these two charges. One charge is Q, another charge is small q. Now, what I may do quickly is that, like, sir, simple it is. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ತಲೆ ಕಡಿಸ್ಕೋತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಿ? F equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon 0 QQ by R square ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಬರ್ಬಿಡ್ರಲ್ಲ ಸರ್. That is the force between. No. If you do so, you are wrong. What's the reason? I am writing this as a Coulomb's law, and that is applicable for the point charge. What's my point? Then what to do? If I am not in position to get it, what to do? In case whenever you are not in position to get something, leave it. No, don't do it that way. If you are not getting that, see that is there any another way? Is there any another means by which you can do that? Yes. So what I do is that whole wire I'll divide into small elements. I'll divide into elementary portion. How small? Infinitesimally small, you can say. And that's what I'm going to do. Whole wire I'm going to divide into a small portion. Now you may ask, what's the need of that? What's the use of that? If I do that, every small portion which I have got by default becomes of negligible size. And when it becomes of negligible size, whatever charge I have got over that portion, I can treat as point charge. And hopefully you might have got it now. What's the benefit of doing so? So if it is a point, another charge on which I have to find the force, already I have mentioned point charge. And between 2 point charge, I have a Coulomb to help. So what I am doing, whole wire I am going to divide into elementary portions. Like this is the one portion, another portion, many more are there. How many? Many more which are of infinitesimally small size. Each portion has got some amount of charge. And that amount of charge which every portion has got, I can take as a point charge. And once I do that, I will be very happy, because Coulomb will come to my rescue to help me to calculate the force. And that's how I am going to go ahead. So I have divided this whole wire into elementary portion. One such a portion which I am going to focus is here. I am going to focus over this portion. Actually, whole wire is of length L, but my focus is not on the whole L. I am focusing on one small portion of length, let us say dl. I am focusing over here. And by default, as I mentioned, as I have made it very small, that dl I can treat of negligible size. Then naturally, charge on the dl I call as a point charge. Now may I get the charge on that elementary portion which I have divided? Obviously. How do I get that? I have the concept of linear charge density. lambda equal to, in the present case, I write Q divided by L. Total charge on the wire by total length of wire. So this guides me. If I want to calculate Q, that is lambda into L. I want to calculate Q on the small portion. Charge in the small portion, a small amount of charge, I say dq. dq for small amount of charge. How much it is? Charge over the unit length into length that I am dealing. So this I got. Charge on the elementary portion that I am focusing on. Charge on elementary portion that I am focusing on. This is the charge. Now this is the elementary charge. Between this elementary charge and another charge small q, I can work out the force. Because now the charges are point charge what I am dealing with. So then obviously without hesitation I can use Coulomb's law. And now force between these two, I mean this elementary charge over here and this charge, I get the small force which I call dr, which is equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon 0 dq into q divided by r square. dq already I have got it. 1 upon 4 pi epsilon 0. How much is dq? Lambda into dl into q divided by r square. So what I got is force on this charge exerted by one of the charge on one of the elementary portion of that wire. So once I get this, I can extend same procedure to the rest of portions which I have got there. I have divided into many elements. So I can work out force on this charge due to this portion, due to this portion, due to this portion, and many more. Like this I'll get. And all those portions, the force due to all these portions, I can add by taking care of direction also. So I'll have to add all the forces. And of course, force being a vector quantity, vectorially you can add. So what I right now, to get the total force, I'll have to add all the forces which I have got. This broad method I am just talking about. While dealing with wire, depending upon how it is arranged and all those parameters, we shall work out the numerical. Just an idea, outlook, how to approach for the situation like this. Then df already I have got it. This I think you are not much aware of. Integration we call this. Basically it is addition, summation. Adding the quantities together we call summation or integration. And this gives me then now df I have got substitute here. 1 upon 4 pi epsilon 0. Then it is lambda q divided by r square, integration of dl you can write. So by using this broad idea about how to deal with if the charges are not point charges, you can go ahead with this kind of technique. So I spoke about in case of this charge distribution being linear. What if I have a plate here and I want to calculate force between this charge and charge on the plate? Again same thing I will do. The whole plate I will divide into elementary surfaces, very small, whose dimension becomes like a elementary portion dimension become negligible. I will work out force between this charge charge on every elementary portion. Like this we will get df 1 upon 4 pi epsilon 0. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗ್ತದೆ ಬರೆ sigma into ds. Like dl I have represented. There I will have like a small areas ds I can call. And then sigma ds into q divided by r square. We'll add this. And you can have integration of surface, you can say integration of ds. Of course, even these parameters may differ from portion to portion. That also have to be taken into account. That to be dealt with integration or some component methods. So as I said, this is a rough idea how to approach if the charge is not point. Same I can have, instead of wire or surface, I have got say some sphere I have filled with charge. Every unit volume of that sphere has got charge. Sigma you can, rho you can say, total charge by volume. You can divide that volume into elementary volumes like a dv. Very small charge on it can be regarded as point charge. You can work out force between this charge and point charge there. 1 upon 4 pi epsilon 0 rho dv will have here into q by distance square. Same you can add all those forces and you can arrive to the final answer. So this is just a broad idea about how to calculate force between distributed charge and point charge. Okay, let me go ahead now. I was talking about distribution of charge. Few more things I should take you forward in connection with charge distribution. What is that? Let me tell you. Whenever you give a charge to conductor, whenever you give charge to the conductor, say I have got this as a conductor. Conductor, you understand? The one which has got abundance of free electrons, mobile electrons, conduction electrons. Such material is referred as conductor. Whereas on the other hand, insulator. What is that? The material which do not have free electrons can be referred as insulator. This is conductor right now what I am talking. To this conductor, say I am going to give charge. It's solid conductor. This is a solid conductor. Solid conductor. And to that solid conductor, some bunch of charge I have put inside. I could get into, and that whatever charge, bunch of charge I have got, I have placed here. But the question is that to the conductor, whatever charge you give, will it remain there? No. Conductor has ability to allow the motion of charge. Abundant of free electrons you have got, additionally you have got there. Now what will happen because of that? Those additional electrons which I have added, earlier balance, whatever the balance you have got, net charge is 0. But when you add additional electrons or when you remove electrons, you mean you are electrifying it? You are keeping the charge. In that case, because of mutual repulsion between all these like charges, because of mutual repulsion between all these charges, they don't stay there. Remember, always repulsion results into going away as possible. Always repulsion results into going away. Same thing will happen with these charges also. Though I have placed them here somewhere, but between them you have got a repulsion. At that repulsion will result into making them to go away as much as possible. What is that maximum distance up to which they can go away? Say these charges will come here, these charges will come here, these charges will come here, these charges will come here. They cannot go beyond that because they are being held there by surface barriers, by surface potential. So at the most, what they can do is that they will come on the outer surface of the conductor. So the point that I want to make here is, whenever charge is given to the conductor, that charge given to the conductor will appear on its outer surface. Very important thing. What is that? Charge given to the conductor, wherever you give, whether you keep here, you keep here, you keep here, or you give on the outer, the situation is that charge given to the conductor comes on the outer surface of conductor. Now if somebody asks you, why it does so? My answer is very simple. What is my answer? To minimize the repulsion. What do they do? Why do they do that? To minimize the repulsion. And what is one of the way to minimize the repulsion? Go away as much as possible, and that's what has happened here. So remember as a point, charge given to the conductor appears on its outer surface. Now obviously the question which will have in your mind, how about if it is not conductor? If it is insulator, if it is a bad conductor? Remember that charge given to the insulator doesn't go on its outer surface like in conductor. Rather, charge given to insulator remains localized there. So what I mean by that? Say I have this as the insulator and some amount of charge to this insulator I have given over here. And this being insulator do not have free charges there. You do not have, they cannot move in the insulator. So what will happen? Wherever you are given, those charges will remain there itself. We call that as a localized. So what is to be remembered then? Charge given to the conductor appears on its outer surface, whereas charge given to the insulator remains localized at the location wherever you are given. Important thing. Now further, the important thing to be understood is about in case of conductor. As I mentioned, charge given to the conductor appears on its outer surface. Depending on geometry of that outer surface, we will have certain important and interesting things to study. So let's go ahead to see how that distribution, in what way the distribution we will have if the charge is given to conductor. I am talking now of the conductor. Okay. Charge given to the conductor appears on its outer surface, I said. Now when I say that it comes on the outer surface, about the distribution of that charge, I will have to talk a term called surface charge density. Now my point of discussion is, will the charge given to the conductor gets distributed uniformly on its outer surface? should tell you that depends on what kind of geometry you have got. So I mean that if the given surface is symmetric, hope you all can understand the word symmetric. Say I have a sphere. This is the center of sphere. From this reference location point center, if I go anywhere on the surface, it is equidistance. So this geometry I can call as a symmetric geometry. In case if I give charge to this symmetric conductor, spherical symmetric conductor, what I see is that charge given to the symmetric bodies gets distributed uniformly on its outer surface. So you have got for symmetric bodies, for symmetric, what is that? Distribution is uniform. Charge distribution is uniform. What if this geometry which I am talking about is not symmetric? I may have a given conductor of this type. Say the conductor is of this pattern. It's not symmetric. It's not like a spherical body I have got there, spherical conductor I have. Symmetric it is. What is this geometry then? It is not symmetric like a sphere there. What kind of geometry you have this one then? You can call it as Auda-Soda geometry. I mean it is not symmetric. You do not have this body, this shape of this body like a symmetric as you had there. Then in this case, distribution of charge won't be uniform. Charge density here you had same everywhere. Sigma value I am talking. Sigma here, sigma here, sigma here, everywhere sigma is same. Charge is uniformly distributed there for the symmetric bodies. If I give charge to this asymmetric bodies, in that case, what I see is that this kind of distribution. So what do I see there? Distribution of charge is not uniform. It is a non-uniform distribution. In case if the bodies are symmetric, probably you can see that. You can understand that from that figure. Wherever curvature is more, I have got dense amount of charge present there. Density of charge is more there. And wherever curvature is less, you can see here, I have shown the charges bit away like. You have got less density of charge. So what to say then? Surface charge density is directly proportional to curvature. More the curvature, more is the charge. Now you may ask me, sir, why should it happen so? That's because we will study in the next, concept. Surface of conductor has to be equipotential. Whatever potential are here has to have over here. Otherwise, what will happen? Charge from one place will start moving on the surface from one place to the another place. No longer the charge will be static. And if it is not static, we won't study that as electrostatic then. That should not happen. Otherwise, just by giving the charge, I would be in position to get the surface current there without spending any energy. And that is not to happen in accordance with law of conservation of energy. I should spend, then only I should get a current. When the charge start moving, you get a current. And if it was so, like give a charge, so that charge will start moving from one place to another place on the surface. When that will happen? If the potential is different from point to point. But that should not be. To have a same potential, so what happens is that charge get distributed in such a way, everywhere on the surface of the conductor, it will have same potential. And consequently, it has happened so. What is that? I will have more amount of charge over that place where curvature is more. Now, I think curvature and radius of curvature, hopefully you can relate. Say for example, I have this surface, flat surface, and one more I have got, let me say, this surface. This is flat, this is bit curved. Now if I ask you which surface has got more curvature, obviously your answer is this one. Now if the more the curvature, I am interested to know radius of curvature. What is that? Radius of curvature is the radius of that imaginary sphere of which given surface forms a part. Understood? So see here. See, by taking this, I will have to imagine a big sphere. Notice, this is the surface what I have got, and here is the sphere imaginary what I am drawing. So this is the part of the imaginary sphere what I am drawing here. Radius of this imaginary sphere I can draw like this somewhat roughly. Say R1. Whereas for the second surface I have got, this is the second surface what I am talking. I can complete by taking this as one imaginary sphere. This is the imaginary sphere what I draw. Whereas radius of this surface I will have this one, R2 I can call, and it is up to you now. You can see R1 is very much greater than R2. Radius of curvature of this first surface is very much greater than radius of curvature of second surface. So how do you relate them? Less the curvature, more is the radius of curvature. More the curvature, less is the radius of curvature. And with this knowledge, my intention is to write relation between density and curvature, and I can write that as surface charge density is inversely proportional to radius of curvature. Nothing else I am writing. Whatever I wrote here, same thing I am writing here. Inverse directly to curvature I said, and inversely to radius of curvature. And for your information, whenever we think of storing the charge, we never prefer a conductor to store the charge with this kind of pointed or sharp locations there. We never prefer a conductor to store the charge with this kind of sharp locations there. What would happen? Now whatever the charge I give, that charge gets distributed in such a way that at the sharp edges, at the sharp points, you will have dense amount of charge present. You will have density more here. Why? Curvature is more here. Radius of curvature is less here. Density of charge is more there. So, as a result of which, those light charges being present over that location in a very dense manner, and that generally happen. When many of us comes together at limited volume, what we will do then? We will start repelling each other, like charges I am talking about. We will start pushing each other. Same charges will do here. Charges will start to push each other, and as a result, you can see that charges are getting leaked into air at the sharp edges of conductor. They leak out into the air. What will happen? If I select a conductor to store the charge with this kind of geometry, no longer my charge will remain there. From the location of this kind, because of more density there, because of more repulsion among them, they will start leaking into the air, and such happening in the conductor is called actionite point. So what is that? Charge leaks out from the sharp locations of conductor into the air. Such phenomenon we call as a actionite point. And you know, this has been used in many applications. Few of them I'll come to that while dealing with capacitor. So right now this is more than sufficient. So only thing I just wanted to bring to your notice, in what pattern charge given to the conductor gets distributed. So let's consolidate then. In case of conductor, uniform symmetric conductor. In case of conductor, on the surface. Symmetric conductor, uniform distribution. Asymmetric conductor, non-uniform distribution. Location where curvature is more density of charge. Location where less radius of curvature is there, more density of charge. So this is all about what we have in the first part of the electrostatic, dealing with all about with electric charge. So before I go to the next one, I mean electric field, you all have got our physics HOD has forwarded you all some set of numericals. I think 10 numericals is been forwarded to you. So few of you at least you might have gone through. So what I do now in the rest remaining time today, we shall go with those basic numericals. So let's go ahead there. Okay. See the numerical number 1. How many electrons must be removed from a conductor so that it acquires a charge 3.5 nanocoulomb. Look here. So what I am being asked to work out is, I am given a conductor. So this is the conductor. Now this conductor to charge positively, you all know what to be done. Electrons to be removed. So here I remove the electrons from this so that it acquires positive charge. How this could happen? I have removed electrons from this conductor. Electrons are removed from this conductor. One electron you remove, plus E charge you will have. Two electrons you remove, plus 2E charge you will have. N electrons you remove, plus Ne charge you will have. This all we are studying in quantization condition. So the charge acquired by this body Q equal to, I can write, plus Ne. Charge acquired I am given there 3.5 nanocoulomb. While discussing about unit of charge, we mentioned that it is a coulomb SI unit. But generally, while writing the unit of the charge, you may find microcoulomb, nanocoulomb, picocoulomb. So that nano, micro, pico is not a part of unit. What is that? Prefix. In order to write values in like a compact form, we avoid writing the power 10 to the power. For those 10 to the powers, we have certain prefixes like 10 to the power minus 6, micro, 10 to the power minus 9, nano. So from that way, nanocoulomb it is written there. N for nano, mu for micro, P for pico. You are studying the first year. Okay. So now what I am asked to calculate, how many electrons are removed. So simply what I have to do, N equal to Q divided by E. Just substitute. You can go ahead. Number of electrons. See, I'll leave you further part for your calculation. Okay. Every numerical what I do, I'll come in this way last step. Further your work is substitution and arriving at the answer. Right now I don't tell you the answer, you struggle it. And in next period if you want, even the answer for each question I can give you. So right now in this way I'll go. So this is about first problem, what is there with you. Let's go ahead then. Second problem, you can see that estimate the number of free electrons in 1 gram of water and the negative charge possessed by them, given that Avogadro's number and molecular weight. Okay. See, I am given, what is that? Mass of water is given 1 gram. Molecular mass of water is given 18 gram. And Avogadro's number is given. How much is that? 6.02 10 to the power 23 is Avogadro's number. And from this, what I am asked to calculate? Number of electrons as well as charge contributed by all those electrons. Negative charge in the given mass of water, you can say. Now look here, you know that water you write H2O, which means that in the water molecule you have got 2 hydrogen atom. Hydrogen, you write H11. What does it mean? You mean that hydrogen has got 1 proton and one electron. My focus is on electron. So one hydrogen, how many electrons you have got? Only one electron. Water molecule to hydrogen. So those two hydrogen in a molecule, water molecule, will contribute how many electrons? You can say they will contribute to the 2 electrons. At the same time, this you have got oxygen molecule. Sorry, oxygen atom you have got. How do you write oxygen? 816. What does it mean? Oxygen has got 8 protons, 8 neutrons, and even 8 electrons. This is mass number of protons and neutrons. This is number of protons and same number of electrons in the neutral atom. So my need is number of electrons. Every oxygen atom in the water molecule is going to contribute 8 electrons. Already I have mentioned. Hydrogen is going, 2 hydrogens are going to contribute 2 electrons. And oxygen, how many electrons is going to contribute? I can see 8 electrons. So all together, if I take one water molecule, all together what I get is 10 electrons contributed by one water molecule. It's important thing. One water molecule, how many electrons I have got? How many electrons I have got? 10 I can say. Now as I am asked to calculate total number of electrons in how much? 1 gram of water. Now my job is now, I should know how many water molecules do I have in the given mass of water. And to do so, I will take an assistance of Avogadro's concept. What is that Avogadro's concept? What did Avogadro say? 1 mole of any sample consists of equal number of entities, consists of equal number of particles, consists of equal number of molecules. And how much is that? 6.023 10 to the power 23. And what is that 1 mole you mean? See, if I have to talk about 1 mole of water, so how much mass of the water makes 1 mole? Its molecular mass, you can say. And it is given over here, like 1 gram of hydrogen, individually hydrogen if you talk, 1 gram of hydrogen is 1 mole. See, helium sample I have got, 4 gram of helium is 1 mole. So carbon 12 I have, 12 gram of carbon is 1 mole. So nitrogen 14 I have got, 14 gram of nitrogen is 1 mole. So oxygen 16 I have, 16 gram of oxygen is 1 mole. But I have here water sample. 18 gram of water makes 1 mole of water, and it is given already. So in 18 gram of water, how many water molecules you have got? Avogadro's water molecules. But what you need? In 1 gram, how many water molecules are there? What for you need? Because you have got to know that in one water molecule, 10 electrons are there. If you get 2 water molecule, 20 electrons. If you have got 3 water molecule, 30 electrons. In that way, I should know the number of water molecules in the given mass. For that, I would write 18 gram consists of Avogadro's number of water molecules. Then 1 gram of water consists of how many water molecules? So that gives me number of water molecules, capital N, better I'll write even over here also. This is number of water molecules and then consequently number of electrons. So how many number of water molecules I am getting? 1 divided by 18 into Na. What are you getting this? Number of water molecules. You can substitute here n equal to 6.023 10 to the power 23 divided by 18. You can carry forward this calculation. And once I'm done with number of water molecules what I have there, what I need is how many free electrons do you have, or how many electrons do you have in 1 gram of water. These many water molecules I have. Then the number of electrons present in the 1 gram of water equal to number of water molecule into, only number I need first. So number of electrons in a calculated number of water molecules. Calculated number of water molecules is here. And each water molecule, how many electrons you have? 10. So I can write 10 into n. Say if n is 1, 10 electrons. N is 2, 20 electrons. N is 3, 30 electrons. This n you can calculate. And if you substitute that, what you get is number of electrons present in the 1 gram of water sample. This is the first part of the problem. In the second part, what has been asked? How much charge, negative charge, do all those electrons contribute? And that's very simple. I'll write charge contributed by all those electrons together equal to n into E. As I am dealing with electron, charge and electron minus E. n refers to the number of electrons what I have got in the 1 gram of hydrogen, 1 gram of water sample. And if I do this calculation, what I am going to arrive at is the final answer. So this is how you can work out in a simple way. The next one that you can see, the next problem you have got. Electrostatic force of repulsion between two positively charged ions carrying equal charge. Okay. Anyhow, just go through this. Sir is waiting. We can continue these problems. All these problems we shall solve in the next period. And soon after completing that, we can begin with next concept of electric field. So, bye.